Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, December 16th. And we begin tonight with the government's decision to delay controversial plans to expand Made in Canada. The move will be made after Parliament returns from its break late next month. This is when the minority Liberal government will be asking for a delay in the expansion of medically assisted dying to include people whose sole underlying conditions are mental disorders. Justice Minister David Lametti says the government has heard concerns that the healthcare system might not be prepared to handle those complicated cases. Dr. Mona Gupta is the chair of an expert panel on medically assisted death, and she doesn't know what the government hopes to accomplish by delaying MAID's expansion. She says the government has already delivered on a promise to study the plan. Meanwhile, the government could owe some lower-income Canadians who don't file their tax returns tens of thousands of dollars in benefits that they haven't collected. Jennifer Robson is an associate professor of management at Carleton University. Now, she has been looking at the problem of non-filers in the tax system and its implications on the delivery of income-tested benefits. In a recent paper, she found that about 10 to 12% of Canadians don't file their tax returns. Researchers estimate that the benefits lost to working-age non-filers was approximately $1.7 billion in 2015. All right, turning to moves by Treasury Board President Mona Fortier, who says federal public servants will soon have to return to in-person office work 2 to 3 days per week. But a major public union is calling this absolutely disrespectful. Ms. Fortier says after the government shifted to a hybrid model during the pandemic, there began to be inconsistencies in the system on how employees were being treated. Chris Aylward is the national president of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, and he says there had been absolutely zero consultation on the decision. And he is concerned about whether government workplaces can accommodate a return to the office en masse. Well, as calls for a search of a landfill north of Winnipeg for the remains of 2 Indigenous women continue, Ottawa is stepping in and providing financial resources to help with a feasibility study to search the area. Jeremy Skibicki is charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, whose partial remains were found in a different landfill, and a fourth unidentified woman. Police initially said a search would not be feasible, but after pressure from Indigenous leaders and victims' relatives, they agreed to be part of a committee to determine the feasibility. All right, well, on the East Coast, a revamped French immersion program is coming for New Brunswick students in Anglophone school districts just in time for next fall. Education Minister Bill Hogan says students in kindergarten and grade 1 will spend half their day in exploratory learning in French and the other half in English for math, reading, and writing. That framework, he says, will continue throughout primary school years. This with the goal of ensuring all high school students graduate with at least a conversational level of French. All right, well, on the other side of the country, an advocacy group is calling on the BC government and police to step up efforts to stomp out the illegal tobacco industry. It is saying the province is one of the worst in Canada for contraband. The Convenience Retailers Alliance for Safe Communities says its most recent studies indicate illegal tobacco is more than 30% of BC's market. Eric Ganayowan of Imperial Tobacco Canada says no one is going to cry because Big Tobacco is losing money, but as much as $2 billion a year is being lost in uncollected taxes. All right, switching gears to a look at wholesale sales, which rose 2.1% to $83.4 billion in October. Now, this came with gains in all but one of the subsectors that Statistics Canada tracks. The agency says the biggest gains came in the subsectors of miscellaneous goods, building material and supplies, and personal and household goods. Overall sales in constant dollars rose 0.9% in October. Canada's Maggie McNeil set a new world short course record in the 50-meter backstroke today. This was at the 25-meter swimming championships in Melbourne, Australia. The star swimmer from London, Ontario, finished in 25.25 seconds. Now, this lowers the mark that she set at the 2019 Short Course Worlds by 0.02 of a second. It's Miss McNeil's second gold and fourth medal overall in Melbourne. All right, stay with us. Forum Daily will be right back with a look at energy prices. We're going to hear from Dan McTeague with Gaswizard.ca. So stay tuned. Forum Daily will be right back. Welcome back. Now we'll be having our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at Gaswizard.ca. Take it away, Dan.
Well, thank you, Nima. It's been a constant refrain over the past few weeks that we're not going to see much in the way of any upside moves for gasoline or for diesel or energy prices. You might have got a glimpse of that earlier this week when we saw energy prices picking up 5, 6, $7 a barrel and gasoline going up 5 or 6 cents a liter. But again, U.S. Fed, central bankers around the world committed to fighting inflation. It's pretty clear that the markets are panicky. They believe that central banks are, in fact, wishing to crash the global economies in order to gain their ultimate goal of reducing inflation. A lot goes into that, but in Canada, it isn't lost on folks like myself who spend a bit of time looking at things like carbon taxes, not just the first one, which will increase by about 3.5 cents a liter come April 1st, but the beginning of the second carbon tax, the clean fuel standard, which could add beginning of, this year or the next year as much as 4 cents a liter. Any way you slice it, that's higher than the guidance and the advice of the central bank, the Bank of Canada, that wants inflation between 1% and 3%. So if you're going to meddle with that energy, diesel, gasoline, the transport fuels, and you're going to drive them to a much higher level than the inflationary guidance or suggested move by the Bank of Canada, then you're dealing with a never-ending battle. Inflation driven by energy driving up inflation, and of course driving up interest rates. I think politicians are going to have to spend a bit more time on that. In the meantime, though, we're seeing record low prices. Vancouver, for instance, down to $1.60 for a liter of gasoline, something we haven't seen since the beginning of December 2021. Over in Alberta, with the lack of or the removal of the provincial tax, $1.25 seems to be the new number that is bandied about. We haven't seen that since October of 2021. Saskatchewan's seen prices down too, although they still have the provincial tax, but still at $1.40, $1.39, $1.37, a pretty good deal. Unfortunately for Manitoba, we're still seeing sticky prices. Gas stations in places like Winnipeg are still $1.52. It's costing those stations no more than $1.20 to $1.25 to buy their fuel, so they're picking up 25 net cents a retail margin. I haven't had many people call me on that in Manitoba. It looks like they're pretty happy with gas stations making like bandits. But I'm sure as a result of this, Nima will probably get a few people calling us. Ontario, look for a continuation of prices for gasoline, at least remaining in the mid to high $30s for the next week or so. Quebec, 15 cents, 16 cents a liter more. That's a differential in taxes, so low $50s. And of course, the Maritimes, who have seen a bit of a decrease in prices, could see that accelerate to the upside next week. Upside, I mean a greater decrease in the price of gasoline. We could be seeing a 5-cent decrease come next week. The big issue, however, is diesel. It isn't moving. And where it is moving, it's certainly not moving in the right direction. Although in Atlantic Canada, they saw an 11-cent decrease, much that not due to diesel prices, but their regulatory bodies there tend to attach diesel to the price of kerosene, stuff used for jet fuel and for furnace oil, but not used for diesel. But I'll let them figure that one out. There was a big surprise decrease of 11 cents a liter. Don't hold on to that forever. As colder weather starts to hit Northern Hemisphere here in Canada, look for diesel prices and furnace oil prices to go up much higher. And even if they start to come down at the end of the winter, which we haven't really quite seen yet in eastern parts of Canada, when they do come down, the federal government will be there to make sure that they are supported, pushed back up by their favorite taxes, not just the first carbon tax, but as I mentioned earlier, the second carbon tax, which we've been talking about for a very, very long time. Go to affordableenergy.ca. You'll see some of the work that we've done, going back studies as well that support the notion that Canada's going about this the wrong way. It's not lost on folks like myself that when the world is looking to cap Russian oil as a means of trying to, remove the finances from Russia, that at the end of the day, you're actually encouraging investors and others to go elsewhere. That's not going to stop Russia from selling oil. It may turn around with OPEC and decide to cut oil production, which I believe they are going to do at the beginning of January. So these things, artificially imposing mandates, green mandates, and other things on the markets only tends to create greater distortions and ultimately higher prices for consumers. So as we set ourselves for the Christmas holiday and get ready to look at these prices, yes, they're a bargain today. This is probably as good as it gets. But going into early parts of 2023, especially the second or third week of January, Nima, look for those prices to go back up. We'll be right here to give you that information and that update. Back to you, Nima.
All right, thanks for that, Dan. Again, that was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at Gaswizard.ca. He's also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All right, stay tuned. Forum Daily will be right back. Catherine Murray joins us next with our weekly crypto update. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now it's time for our weekly crypto and digital asset update with Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. Take it away, Catherine, all yours.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital asset update. I'm Catherine Murray. We are seeing cryptocurrencies trade lower to the tune of 3 to 5%, in line with what we're also seeing in the equity markets over the past couple of days, trading lower following comments from U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Wednesday. The FOMC did raise the rates by 50 basis points as expected, but his commentary was a little bit more hawkish than the market and/or investors were anticipating, sending risk on assets lower. Now, since last week's update, where we continued to follow the FTX bankruptcy fallout, this week its founder and CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, was arrested in the Bahamas on Monday. U.S. federal prosecutors have charged him with 8 counts, including wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The judge did deny him bail, and he will be held in the correctional facility in Nassau until February. The SEC has alleged that he used commingled funds from his crypto hedge fund to purchase tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate in the Bahamas for himself, his friends, his parents, and other FTX employees. His parents are very well-known law professors from Stanford. Now, given the loss of confidence within the industry, the largest crypto exchange, which is Binance, actually had its founder and CEO interviewed on CNBC yesterday, trying to reassure that customers' funds are fully backed and that people can withdraw 100% of their assets that they have on Binance, the exchange, at any given moment. Now, crypto trading firm QCP Capital, which is based in Singapore, put out a statement claiming its clients and counterparts will not be impacted by the assets lost on FTX. They put this statement out after The Block, which is a crypto-focused company, cited sources saying that the trading firm's losses on FTX exceeded $97 million. Now, also according to The Block, they apparently obtained some documents that the now bankrupt hedge fund, Three Arrows, had approximately $1 billion of assets at the July time period. That was made up of fiat currencies as well as tokens, NFTs, and also some venture investments. That number, of course, would be lower today, just given the volatility within the crypto space. But they also said that they had over $3 billion of liabilities. Interestingly, traditional brokerage firm or investment bank Jefferies is out with a report saying that, or comments saying that they believe that FTX creditors will recover 20 to 40% of the funds. Again, we continue to watch and track the fallout for you. There has been, of course, a call, for more regulations and also financial audits of exchanges. Interestingly, the French accounting firm Mazars Group is suspending its proof of reserves audit services for crypto exchanges and had been working with Binance as well as a number of others. Now, blockchain, it's always important to keep your eyes on what's going on within blockchain and the ability or not to raise funds. Aztec, which is a startup which is aiming to build an encrypted blockchain on Ethereum, has actually raised $100 million. And lastly, maybe you saw this, that former President Trump, teased that he was going to be coming out with a major announcement. Well, Thursday night, His announcement was that he launched a collection of digital trading cards, or NFTs, depicting him in various pictures, including as a superhero, an astronaut, and a NASCAR driver, saying that these limited edition cards feature amazing art of his life and career. NFTs, of course, are touted as digital answers to collectibles. They can be bought, sold, and traded. And apparently, the initial price apparently was $99, and that buying an NFT automatically entered the buyer into a sweepstake where the prizes included a group cocktail party at Mar-a-Lago, dinner on Miami, perhaps golfing with the president, a Zoom call with the president, and buying 45 or more NFTs would guarantee an invite to a gala with Trump in South Florida. And lastly here, apparently the Donald Trump NFT collection sold out within hours. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Lots to keep our eyes on. Again, that was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. It airs at 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings only on the News Forum Network. All right, stay with us. Forum Daily will be right back after the break with a look at the major news stories and headlines from around the world. So stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Ukrainian officials say Russia's latest attacks on Kyiv are among the biggest of the war. Russia fired dozens of missiles across the country, creating emergency power outages in at least 4 cities. The attacks happened after the U.S. agreed to give a Patriot missile battery to Ukraine. Well, amid the conflict in Ukraine and growing regional tensions, Japan's self-defense-only post-war principle is being loosened. Japan adopted a national security strategy on Friday. It declared plans to possess preemptive strike capability and cruise missiles within years. This to give itself more offensive footing against threats from neighboring China, Russia, and North Korea. North Korea has fired more than 30 ballistic missiles this year. This includes one that flew over Japan. China fired 5 ballistic missiles into waters near Japanese southern islands. All right, well, meanwhile, Japan's new strategy has drawn China's anger. This comes as a squadron of Chinese Navy ships sailed through straits near Japan into the Western Pacific this week. Beijing blasted Tokyo's adoption of a new national security strategy, putting itself on a more offensive footing. This is largely as a result of the perceived threat from China. To the Middle East now, where Jordan has imposed a temporary ban on the social media platform TikTok. The decision comes a day after a police officer was killed during clashes with protesters that broke out over high fuel prices. Videos flooded TikTok, and Jordan's Public Security Directorate said on Friday that it was suspending the popular video application. This was, quote, after its misuse and failing to deal with publications inciting violence and disorder. Truck drivers launched a strike last week to protest high fuel prices in the Arab Kingdom. The strike and protests have spread to several cities across Jordan. Clashes erupted in multiple cities on Thursday. Meanwhile, in Europe, over 15,000 demonstrators have braved the cold in Brussels to call for protection from high energy prices and inflation. The protest was backed by the 3 main unions, which affected public services throughout Belgium. The unions demanded pay increases for people under pressure from high prices. Now, this comes at a time when companies like energy giants are making massive profits. They are also seeking a freeze in energy prices and increased taxation on capital. Disaster struck concertgoers in the UK. 3 people are still in critical condition after being caught in a crowd trying to get into London's O2 Brixton Academy. 8 people were rushed to hospital last night, and 2 people with less serious injuries were treated at the scene. Police say a large crowd of people who didn't have tickets tried to gain entry to the performance by Nigerian Afrobeat star Asake. The police response is still under investigation after video emerged of an officer appearing to shove a woman down a few stairs at the venue entrance. The International Energy Agency says coal use is set to reach a new global record this year. This comes as demand remains persistently high for the heavily polluting fossil fuel. The Paris-based agency says while coal use grew by only 1.2%, the increase pushed it to an all-time high of more than 8 billion metric tons. This beats the previous record set in 2013. After pledging a commitment to free speech under new owner Elon Musk, Twitter has suspended the accounts of some journalists writing about the platform. Accounts of reporters with the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, Voice of America, and other publications went dark yesterday with no explanation from the social media platform. The sudden suspension followed a decision by Twitter's new owner on Wednesday. This was to permanently ban an account that automatically tracked the flights of his private jet using publicly available data. Mr. Musk tweeted yesterday that it's fine for reporters to criticize him, but disclosing his real-time location and endangering his family is not. 1,500 fish are dead after a huge aquarium burst at the Aquadome tourist attraction in the heart of Berlin this morning. 1 million liters of water poured out of the aquarium into the building, which also contains a hotel, cafes, and a chocolate store, causing what the mayor calls a veritable tsunami of water. 2 people were slightly injured. In a remarkable story of survival, officials in Utah say a skier is alive and recovering after an avalanche carried him away and buried him under debris. Off-duty firefighter Tom Albrecht says he was out skiing with his dog when he heard another skier shouting for help. He says when he came across the 35-year-old man, he had been pinned against a tree, luckily with an arm and his head exposed. That discovery kicked off an 8-hour rescue effort, which ultimately had a happy ending. We all love happy endings. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.